Okay, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, Salatu wassalamu ala Sayyid al-Anbiya'i wal Mursaleen, Allahumma alimna ma yanfa'una, wanfa'na bima tu'allimna, wa zidna bi fadlika ilman wa ta'liman, innaka ala kulli shay'in qadir. Okay, so we were here. So it says, and the lawful and unlawful women to marry. That's not obviously a chapter in the Quran. That is just these side notes, these little chapters that, or chapter headings or concept headings that the translator has added. It says, do not marry former wives of your fathers except what was done previously. So um, obviously there's a number of things there. Out of respect for people, out of issues of genes and various things like that. There's major issues there. But I wanted to look at the last point. It says, except what was done previously. There is a general principle, right? General or a loose principle, which is يغتفر في الدوام ما لا يغتفر في ابتداء. That things are overlooked in the long run that are not overlooked to begin with. Meaning, you have a situation and the Mufti said, you say, well, this happened and that happened and this happened, that happened. The Mufti's like, okay. He's looking at the situation and what happened and all the various different things that happened are not ideal. Some of these things are really, really not ideal and there's nothing you can do about it. Other things are kind of not ideal, but can be overlooked. Why? Because they've already happened. Okay? So, for example, you or prayers that you did in a kind of funny way. You come and ask somebody, Sheikh, can I pray like this? You say, no, that's not, you can't pray like that. Doesn't count. Okay, well, what if I prayed like this? You say, well, if you prayed like that, you'd have to repeat the prayer. Okay, Sheikh, I used to pray like that for the last 20 years. Like, oh, hmm, okay. So now he's going to start to try and bend things a little bit because things that are things that when you say, okay, I'm going to do this now, you say, no, we're not going to, you can't do that. That's not permissible. So here, for example, in this scenario, like, oh, I want to go marry my my step my my stepmom. You can't marry your stepmom after your dad dies. You can't do that. She's a mahram to you. Okay, so now in the Jahiliyyah, all that actually happened, right? This was part of this tribal thing in that women stay in the tribe, and this exists in some countries today, right? This exists in some countries today where if you marry into a family, if there's a divorce or that man dies, you have to marry his brother because it's considered like these two large tribes slash families have connected, they have to stay connected in that same way, right? And so they'll be forced to do that, culturally forced to do that, right? It happens in certain Muslim countries, which it shouldn't have at all. But anyway, that's a concept. So the idea that okay, now I'm going to marry my stepmom, um, you can't do that. But what if you had already done that? So does that mean that your children that you had when you married your dad, when you married your stepmom, are they not your children? And your children's children are not your children? No, it's overlooked, right? There are certain things like that that are overlooked. Contracts between non-Muslims, right? So you come up to me and say, Fareed, we're going to do the fiqh of marriage in the Shafi'i school. Okay, this is 8 conditions, 20 conditions. You have to say this word, and if you paused here, this wouldn't count. All these very technical things of how the marriage contract happens. It's technical, and it's quite easy to get it wrong, right? It's quite easy to get the marriage contract wrong. It's not impossible. Then you say, well, hang on a minute. When I married my husband, we were both Christians, and I didn't say the words that you just said right now. Say, oh, that doesn't matter because the contracts that you had as kuffar count. So now when you become Muslim, they're still there. I say, okay, why? يغتفر في الدوام ما لا يغتفر في ابتداء. Things are overlooked in the long run, they're not overlooked to begin with. If you were to go and do this same contract right now, the same contract that you just did in the church 20 years ago, you repeat this contract with the same language and the same verbiage in in a mosque right now, it wouldn't count. Right? Um, um, So you could have, things overlooked, problems with rituals. Hajj is slightly different. Trying to think that's different. It's a different issue. But there's many issues like that, right? There's many issues we've seen fiqh where they say, yeah, it's overlooked. Now that it's happened, it's overlooked, right? But you couldn't proactively go and do that thing. Okay, indeed, it was indeed a shameful, despicable, and evil practice. Also forbidden for you to marry are your mothers, your etc., etc., etc. So there's basically three ways that you can become a mahram, right? What does a mahram mean? It means somebody you couldn't marry of the opposite sex, right? There's basically three ways you can become mahram. One is through lineage. Okay, one is through lineage, meaning this is your father or mother, your grandfather or grandmother, your great grandfather or great grandmother, okay, or your child or grandchild or great grandchild, right? That's up and down, or your sibling, right? This is your brother, this is your sister, so that's your mahram. Be it half sister or full sister, half brother or full brother, it's your mahram. One of your parents is the same, you can't marry that person. So that's up, sideways. And then your uncle, meaning the sibling of any of the people we just mentioned. So your dad or mum's sibling, your grandfather's or grandmother's sibling, your great grandmother or great grandfather's sibling. Okay? So these are that's your great aunt or your aunt or your great aunt, your great great aunt, etc. Your great uncle, etc. Okay, so that's through lineage. So and then your yeah, so that's on one side. So then your siblings' kids. So your brother's daughter, your brother's daughter's daughter. So that is your grand niece, and you are her grand uncle. So that's your mahram. You can't marry her, right? So we went up, we went down. Sideways can only go so far because it stops at brother and sisters and doesn't go that far, right? And then it goes down from your siblings, your brother or sister's offspring, right? These are your nieces and nephews. Okay, that makes sense, everybody? Okay, so that's through lineage. Now through marriage. Okay, now through marriage. So somebody who your dad marries or your mum marries, right? Or your granddad marries or your granddad or your grandma marries, right? That's going to be your mahram. Okay, that's going to be your mahram. Similarly, somebody who your child marries. So interestingly, if your daughter or son got married, that's your son-in-law, right? That is permanently your son-in-law, even if the next year your son got divorced or your daughter got divorced. So you have more of a tie to that person than your son or daughter does, right? So your daughter-in-law or son-in-law is permanently your daughter-in-law or son-in-law, right? Um, yeah. Um, Similarly, your parents' spouses, right? So your dad gets married, your mum gets married. That person is always your mahram, even if your parents are no longer married to those people anymore. Okay, so that's through marriage. You said your parents, who your parents marry, who your grandparents marry, who your great grandparents marry. Okay, what about their offspring though? The offspring of the people who marry your parents, are they your mahrams? And I'm not talking about the offspring of your parents or your grandparents or your great grandparents. I'm talking about the offspring specifically of the people who marry your parents or your grandparents or great grandparents. are these mahrams? The answer is no, right? So there's a man, he's 40 years old and he's divorced. He has a son who is 20 years old. The 40-year-old marries Fatima, some other lady. Fatima has a daughter. Can the man's son marry Fatima's daughter? Yeah, of course. Right. So father and son married, mother and daughter. It's fine. Right? Because they're not related. Or vice versa. I mean, it doesn't really matter who marries who. What do you want? What's wrong? Um, okay, so how else to marriage then? And then people who your children marry, or your children's children marry, or your children's children's children marry. Okay, so that's that. Then how else? Then okay, through marriage then, the parents of the people you marry. Okay? So you marry somebody, their parents become your mahram. Okay? Their children become your mahram. So you marry somebody, their child is your mahram, their grandchild is your mahram. Right? And that's it. Am I missing anything? I think that's it. So people who your parents and grandparents and great parents marry, people who your children and grandchildren marry, the parents of the people you marry, and the children of the people you marry. Yes, that's it. So what about somebody who your sibling marries? Is that a mahram to you? Right? So your brother, your right, or somebody who your spouse or the sibling, so the spouse of your sibling or the sibling of your spouse. So my wife's sister, is she my mahram? No, she's not. My brother's wife, is she my mahram? No, she's not. And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, they said, Ya Rasulullah, the Prophet ﷺ said, إِيَّاكُمْ وَالدُّخُولَ عَلَى النِّسَاءِ. He said, be very, very careful of entering a place where there's women, right? So default gender segregation, unless there's some kind of need, right? I need to work with women. I'm in a field and there's men and women working together. That's just the reality of the situation, right? What can I do? But when that's not the case, Prophet ﷺ said, be very careful of entering a place where there's women, right? And then the Prophet they said, Ya Rasulullah, أَفَرَأَيْتُمُ الْحَمُ. They said, what about the brother-in-law, right? Like his family, right? Prophet said, Al-Hamul Maut. He said the brother-in-law is death. Like he's the most dangerous person in your life, right? The brother-in-law. Because if something happened between you and your brother-in-law, you're ripping apart, you're doing the haram, he's doing the haram, and you're ripping apart your own family. It's really, really bad. So we have to be very, very careful with in-law, with your brother-in-law and sister-in-law. This is a very dangerous situation. Unfortunately, in many cultures, it's considered overlooked. You find certain cultures that are very, very conservative, right? They're very, very conservative, but they'll consider the brother-in-law or sister-in-law as kind of like family, right? Then also economic reasons, right? So economic reasons, the parents have a big-ish house. They have a big-ish house. The kids want to get married, but it's too difficult. So now in the house there's the parents and the kids are all married, right? And so it's hard. People are in the kitchen, people doing this, people doing that. But it's a really, it's not a good idea at all. It's not a good idea at all, right? It's far superior to live in a tiny little place with a little bit far away, right? And just get by than to be continually around your brother-in-law and sister-in-law. It's not good, right? So we have to understand that we've spoken about this before, people are not, attraction and fitna is not logical. It's not a logical thing. So people don't use their brain, right? So what happens is there's all these problems. So they have problems with their spouse, for example, and then so they see one side of the family and they don't see the other side of the family. So they see one side, for example, of their spouse, but they don't see that side of the other person. So all they see is my husband is working, his brother is working. My husband is working and not making enough money. His brother is making enough money. My my husband has arguments with me. I never have arguments with my brother-in-law. Of course, you don't have arguments with your brother-in-law because you're not married to him, right? My wife is like this, her sister is like this. You don't see her other side. So the shaitan starts whispering and things happen. And then when it goes wrong, it goes really wrong. And when it doesn't go wrong, it goes wrong, right? Meaning when you have a sense that there's kind of like some kind of, like why did you put the food there? Why did you go to that side of the table? Why did you say that joke within earshot of her? Right? So there's tensions that can happen, right? People can feel jealousy and whatever they can think, but when it's jealousy in there, it really goes wrong, right? When you, for example, like my strength, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we've spoken about this, the patriarchic system, my strength as a community is in the nucleus of the family and then in the patriarchic system. So my strength is coming from my brothers. If I'm strong with my brothers, then it's going to work. But if my brother's like, bro, I'm sorry, you just cross the line with my wife all the time, or he feels like it does when it's not, right? Or if I feel like he crosses the line with my wife or my wife with him or whatever it is, then it's always awkward. And then suddenly that strength, the spine is broken, right? Imagine walking with no spine. You couldn't, right? Your spine is extremely important. So the spine of the Muslim community is the patriarchic system. So anything that breaks that is a big problem. And not even just that, right? The Prophet said you can't marry two sisters. That's not patriarchic. But again, her strength is in her family as well. She has strength through her family. You marry two sisters, you split them apart. That's why you can't marry two sisters. You can't do that. Question: a man marries woman A. She dies. Leaves two sons. Man marries woman B. Can the man be the woman B's stepson marry? One second. A man marries woman A. She dies, leaves two sons. The man then marries woman B. Can woman B's stepson, the husband's son, marry her sister? Yeah, of course. Yeah, it's totally fine. Yeah. So he married the woman. So basically now the father and son married two sisters, right? Yeah. So here's the problem. The problem is sometimes, for example, okay, I'll give you an example, okay? My wife is like 15 years older, I think, 15 years older than her cousins, okay? So when they were little, she used to babysit them, she might have changed them, etc., right? You fast forward 20 years, and in some people's minds, oh, that's still my aunt. That's still my whatever, like my aunt Rafi, right? She's like don't know how much older than this, but she's significantly older than us. Anyway, so we look at her as aunt. She's like an aunt, right? Auntie Rafi. Oh, but she's not my aunt, right? Like so now I'm almost 40. She's maybe almost 50 or maybe mid 50s or something like that. That's not such a big difference in age. So what people do then is they say, "Oh, it doesn't matter. It's okay," when it does. It does, right? It is significant. Okay, if you're 90, okay, it doesn't matter. I don't mind. Right? If you're 90, there's still some rules, but there's less rules. Okay, if you're 90, you're not 90, right? So people think of things in a certain way. When it should do. So mother's sister's husband, mahram while married to one's aunt is not a mahram now. So that's a mahram mu'aqqad. So so can you marry an aunt and a niece? He can't marry the two of them, right? But he could marry one and then the other. So 1 year he marries your he marries your mother's sister, Okay? Divorces her, marries you. Divorces you, marries her. Divorces you, divorces her, marries you every year, right? So yeah, so that's a mahram, just like two sisters. Does that make sense? Okay, so we mentioned marriage, we mentioned lineage. The third thing is what? So third way that you can become a mahram. Breastfeeding. Thank you. Right? So this woman breastfed you. She is your mother. Her mother is your mother. Her that's your her mother's mother is your mother. Her daughter is your sister. Her daughter's daughter is your niece, etc. On down. Okay? But the thing is, it stops with you. So your brother is not related to her at all. Your sister not related to her at all. So it doesn't go beyond you. Similarly, if she's my mother, then she's like my dad's sister or wife, right? It's like, no, it's not. So is she a mahram to my dad? No. She breastfed me, not my dad. So that means she's my mahram, but she's not a mahram to my dad, right? Um, okay. Okay, where do we get to? So that's basically it, right? And she would be who to my children? She would be, yes, she'd be mahram to your children, yeah. So it goes through you, yeah. And then as a woman, her husband is also my mahram if he caused the milk. So he impregnated her, okay? He impregnated her. She now gives birth and she's now lactating. She, as I'm a female, she gave milk to me. Now her husband is what's called sahib laban, the cause of the milk. So he's also my dad. So their kids, male and female, are my mahrams, and right, as opposed to she gave me milk and then he married her. Right? That's not Sahib Leban. He didn't cause the milk. Does that make sense? Okay. So here's a problem. Here's a problem that often happens, and we should be careful, right? Pros and cons of the milk mother's husband, yeah. Is a mahram to the girl that she breastfed. So here's a problem, okay? Here is a problem. Two problems. Um, you like your siblings, okay? You like hanging out with your siblings, they're on the same page religiously. Their kids, meaning your nieces and nephews, are good sahaba for your kids. So you're like, hey, why don't we um make sure they're all mahrams through milk? Okay? I can get one, for example, one lady to give milk to all of them, or we could exchange the sisters could give milk to the different babies, etc. Right? That's good and that's bad. It's good because you're now all mahrams. You can all hang out. They have a bigger clan. They have more people to hang out with, etc. Um, the problem is, what if they are actually good marriageable material? You know? So you're now in the 21st century and you're assuming there's lots of religious people out there to marry, and then it's like, no, there isn't. So you've just eliminated a person who's potentially marriageable, right? It's not haram to marry a cousin. So it might not be ideal. The other thing which is more important is you have to actually hang out with them because otherwise it's going to be like this. When you were 2 and 3, you used to hang out all the time and you remember. Then you moved to another state, to another country. 15 years later, you're now 18 and here's this other 18-year-old girl, right? I'm an 18-year-old boy, she's an 18-year-old girl, and she, by the way, she's your mahram. I say, yeah, I understand she's my mahram, but I don't feel emotionally and physically like that, right? She doesn't feel like my sister. because I didn't grow up with her. I didn't used to find her toothpaste on the wall. I didn't have to knock on the door and she was in the bathroom. I didn't see her spill her cornflakes on the floor. I didn't have arguments with her get who's going to sit in the front seat. Like you don't feel like she's your sister. You feel like she's another teenage female. So why is that problematic? Why is that problematic? Exactly. They see each other as potentials, but then they're not. So it's actually really cruel, right? It's really cruel, right? It's like you're a fitna. It is haram for me to look at you because I find you attractive and I cannot not look at you with attraction. But at the same time, you're actually my sister. So you don't have to wear hijab in front of me. And you're like, it's okay, I can hug you. Good job. It's like, your parents are like, yeah, you can hug, it's fine. And you're like, oh, okay. Right. So what you need to do then is follow go through the whole process. Meaning, yes, these are brothers and sisters milk-wise, then treat them as brothers and sisters like, from young. So they hang out together and they always see each other as brothers and sisters, and there's never that feeling, right? There was an interesting talk, that somebody was kind of a professor was talking about was attraction. One of the things with attraction is you have to be distant. So one things that happened with people with spouses that spend too much time together is they start to see each other as like brother and sister, right? It's like you have to be far in order to be attracted, if that makes sense, right? Like, like, oh, the new boy in school, the new girl in school, everyone's like, oh my God, she must be so beautiful. And like, or somebody else, people who look different are attractive, right? Um, that's a reality, right? People who are different, you know, and so, um, it's quite an important thing, right? Quite an important thing to just be cognizant of that. Like, yes, I want my brothers and sisters to have more close, I want my kids to have more close Muslims and Muslimas to hang out with. That would be great. But do it properly then, right? Don't do it in a irresponsible way, right? Don't do it in an irresponsible way. Similarly, breastfeeding. Oh yeah, let's just breastfeed is great. And then you didn't remember it, right? So it's now 40, 50 years later, and there you are with your wife, and this old lady comes to town, right? Or your mum's talking to some old lady in Pakistan, and she's like, yeah, well, I breastfed. She's telling you that she breastfed your mum and you breastfed your wife's mum. So what does that mean? And you got three kids. She breastfed your mum and she breastfed your wife's mum. So that means you're married to your sibling. That means your marriage is annulled. That's a serious problem, right? And can that happen? Yes, it can happen, right? Right? So this one lady, she is your milk grandmother and your wife's milk grandmother. So therefore you are married to your mahram, right? So it's a problem. You need to know, you need to know what's going on, right? So it's not a joke, right? Okay. So you need to, so basically what I'm trying to say is we need to be aware of what's going on with milk. It's not just anything. So A, be aware, and B, treat it as milk brothers and sisters so that later on you can actually hang out, right? And it's not something awkward. Shouldn't just be awkward. Okay, so we spoke about those things. Now, there's another way that you could become a mahram as well, other than through marriage, and other than through lineage, and other than through milk, and it's an issue of debate, and that is through unlawful or unlegislated sexual activity. So through zina, so intentional, sinful sexual activity, or accidental, right? You married somebody, you and your twin brother married two twin sisters, and you slept with the wrong woman. Okay, so now her child is your mahram, but right, that wasn't marriage though. You had a child with her. That's not your mahram. That's not. It wasn't through marriage, but it is your child, right? And outside of the Shafi'i school as well, you will find that the other scholars as well, they talk about basically nakaha in Arabic means marriage and also means intercourse. So the Shafi'is, they say, if your dad marries somebody, that's your mahram. The other schools say, no, if your dad marries somebody or sleeps with somebody, that's your mahram. So your dad's ex-girlfriend, is your mahram, right? Um, uh, Similarly, through incest, may Allah protect us, right? So, in a situation of incest, may Allah protect us, right? A man sleeps with his daughter. May Allah protect us all, okay? What happens now? That means the daughter's mother is the man's mahram, right? So, outside of the marriage, let's take it outside of the marriage, okay? And this is not in the Shafi school. This is outside of the Shafi school. So, this man sleeps with a girl. Can he marry her mother? The answer is no, it's a mahram. Similarly, inside a marriage, here's this man who slept with his own daughter. May Allah protect us. He committed incest. Now, her mother is his mahram, meaning his wife. So he slept with her, the marriage is annulled. Okay? So that's a problem. And the Hanafis, they will add various other things there as well. Other sexual activity that can result in mahramiyah, right? So it doesn't have to be intercourse itself. It could be other sexual, for example, other sexual activity, whereby the what's it called? But whereby the that you can establish mahramiyah, you can establish that person's a mahram. So they were sexually active, but they didn't actually have intercourse per se, right? So something like that happened, he still becomes a mahram to you. So that still involves it still annuls the marriage, annuls the marriage. It does not in the Shafi school, because in the Shafi school, zina has no repercussions other than being stoned to death or various punishments. It doesn't establish anything, right? In the Shafi school, but for the others, it does. Now, there's differences, etc., on how and when, etc., details, but it is an issue, right? Are your own step siblings mahrams? No, they're not. Step siblings. So my dad marries a woman and she already had kids. Is that what you mean? Is that what you mean, Zaid? My dad marries Layla. Layla already has kids. Is that what you mean, Zaid? So no. So your dad marries this lady, she has kids. When your dad marries this lady, those kids become mahram to your dad, but they don't become mahram to you. So you can marry them or not marry them. Does that make sense? You want to use the mic, Zaid?
So I'm Shahab. Yeah,
Yeah.
so just to get it right, so you can marry your stepbrother or step siblings.
Yes.
Sorry, what that?
Yeah.
Forgot the left hand.
So you can
Makes
you
sense.
can you can get married on the same day. Like you and your dad married a mother and a daughter, right? Or later on. So the point is this girl, so here's this girl who's now your dad's mahram. She's not your mahram, right? So you can't touch her, you can't hug her, you can't see her without hijab, etc. Does that make sense? Okay, great. Um, Ma'ab says, would someone following that opinion have to disclose those haram rish? I mean, you got to do something, right? So there's this is what happens, right? Unfortunately, there's so much stigma that people just prefer to be in a haram relationship, right? Instead of doing something. So it's like there's like multiple issues here, right? So, may Allah protect us. Incest is common. Like sexual, unfortunately, it's like a reality, right? It's like sexual abuse from parents to children is common. It's not uncommon at all, right? It's not uncommon at all. And and one of the reasons that makes it common among Muslims is because people don't do anything about it, right? So if you're, let's make a comparison. I'm from a well-to-do, um, you know, well-to-do Eastern family versus I'm like from a white trash family. I come home as a woman, fine, or I hit my daughter tells me that dad tried to touch me in a really weird way. Like I'll just blow up on him and expose him, right? That's what they would do. Whereas in the East, we're like, oh, that's a shame. Like, we're a good family. You can't say that. You're going to ruin the family name. You're going to do this, etc. Right? Like, you can't ruin the family's name. That's a disgrace. So therefore, it's covered up. And so because it's covered up, you get away with it. And because you get away with it, you do it. Right? That's that. Basically, sexual abuse happens when people know they can get away with it. That's what happens. Right? When they know that you won't expose them, or they know that you trust them. Right? So. May Allah forgive us and protect us all. So there's two issues. Number one is you can't hide someone's faults and just you know at the cost of staying in a haram relationship. So the simplest thing to do is to keep it quiet, okay? And the wife sits down with the husband and says, basically, you know the situation. What you've just done is haram and shameful and disgusting, and may Allah forgive you. We are now mahrams. We're not, right? So that means we're not married anymore. So what you should do is divorce me, suratan, as a outwardly, divorce me, okay? So that people just think we're divorced, okay? If you want a safe face like that, you can do that. We're divorced, and we're going to keep the daughter away from you until she's recovered from what happened and she feels safe around you. Okay? That's what should be done. That's option A. Option B is, well, this happens all the time. This guy is doing this all the time, right? And by default, you cannot expose people's faults. But if it's necessary to stop harm, we're going to take him to court and, oh, this happened. Sheikh so and so did this, or this elderly man did this, and and take him to court, etc. And even if it doesn't go through, the fact that he was taken to court, it means there's a stop to things, you know, because it's not a joke, like really not a joke. Um, and again, it's the whole people basically protected through taboo, right? It's like protected through taboo, right? Because it's a taboo, no one's going to talk about it, and because no one's going to talk about it, we're going to get away with it, right? In some other cultures, for example, things you do with boys and things you do with women. If you slept with a woman, you'd be killed. If you touched a boy inappropriately, a man touched a boy inappropriately, people would be like, oh, they wouldn't have a language for it, or they would kind of like overlook it, or they would think it's weird, so they don't process it, right? Or a man doing something with a man is kind of like overlooked. So that's why you find homosexuality and pedophilia in conservative cultures has a place because it's kind of like in a different category, right? Whereas anything to do with women is like unacceptable, right? So it's it's we've got to tread carefully, and we don't have to adopt the whole Western way of looking at it. We're not Westerners, we have to do that. But there's real things there. You can't say, oh, let's follow the Shafi school. Ha ha ha. Like, what do you mean? For the convenience of saving of because you don't want to be embarrassed because you want to stay in this marriage because you want to continue doing this practice. Like, I don't know, So there's a lot of things like it's really, really not funny. Like really not funny. Um, so may Allah protect us all, right? Mother and son, yes. I mean, it'd be very difficult though, right? So Uh, so if we say intercourse itself, that's quite difficult for a woman to do something like that to her son, right? Um, but it's possible, right? It's possible. So if the son, mother and son had incest, then how does it work? Yeah, that. Hang on a minute. Yeah, that means yeah, because that's like yeah, that would become that means yeah, same thing, same situation. So who knows what happened with Oedipus? Who knows the story of Oedipus? Oedipus and the Oedipus complex, right? What happened? What's the story, right? So he he kills his dad, not knowing that his dad, right? And then he marries his mum, not knowing his mum, and then bit by bit things start to click in his head, right? And what does he do right at the end? Like when it all clicks, what does he do? He tears his own eyes out, right? So there's sexual abuse, which is very, very deep and like, right? Anything to do with that world is always very deep, right? People who think they can just sleep around and it doesn't affect you emotionally, it does affect you emotionally, right? It does affect you emotionally, right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned just here, how could you take it back after you have enjoyed them intimately, right? And you have taken from them a firm commitment. So you're just taking back the mahar you gave. Oh, I want it back anyway. But you've already slept with this woman. It's like it's not necessarily a scar, but there's a huge imprint. Right? There is an imprint on somebody. If you are intimate with somebody, there's an imprint on you. So when that imprint is done in the wrong way through sexual abuse in general, or through zina in general, it's a very difficult imprint. It's very it's arguably unremovable, right? On top of that, so now imagine, for example, here's a woman, may Allah protect us all, okay, dealing with rape that happened to her when she was a teenager, okay? So she might be thinking, why did my parents not look after me? Why didn't this happen? There's all these insecurity issues around men, about the whole issue of intimacy. Can I feel safe? I don't feel safe. Very, very complex, right? It's very, very complex and very, very deep and very, very painful and very hard to get out of. And now you add to that the person who is supposed to protect you violated you. The person who is supposed to protect you violated you. So that's Oedipus ripping his own eyes out, like you've turned the person inside out. It's like a cat. You turn the cat inside out. Right? What is that? What does a cat look like inside out? What does your brain look like inside? It's like you just inverted everything. Like you've inverted everything, and you just right. Like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions Maryam, right? When they say that Allah has a son, it's like the universe almost falls apart because it's like you've said zero is one, and if zero is one, then two is. It's like well, then all numbers fall apart and all the systems fall apart. Everything just crashes. It's very, very, very painful. And so, like, look how the dean's trying to preserve the family, the strength of the unit family. You just rip the family apart. You rip the family apart in the most painful way, right? And yes, people, it will be made right. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will make it right. That's true. Allah will make it right. And that person may have insights and experiences in life that other people couldn't, right? The girl that happens to, she goes through a lot of pain, but she'll learn from it and she might be able to do more good than she could do otherwise. Of course, it's good in the big picture. It's Allah destined it, of course, right? Well, in the small picture, in terms of your own actions, it's just like shocking, right? And then obviously, then if he confesses it, so he's been married and he slept with his daughter, that's called zina. So what's the punishment if you've been married and then you sleep with somebody who's not your wife? What happens? You get stoned to death, right? Right? That's what happens to you, right? So this person is supposed to be deleted, right? That's what they are literally supposed to be deleted from society. Like you are rupturing society, you are breaking society. You need to be deleted from society. That's what it is, right? So the default is forgiveness and overlooking. That's fine, but there's certain things in the Sharia. This person is here. The harm that this person creates in society, they need to be removed from society, right? That's what's supposed to happen to them, right? So it's really not okay. So then you come up with a fiqh solution. Oh, let's follow the Shafi school. And let's say, for example, you shouldn't expose people's faults. And then the Shafi school, they're still mahram, so they're still married. Ha ha. It's not funny at all. Like, how could you live with somebody who raped you and call him dad and respect him in front of other people? And when you're not very nice to him, people like, oh, it's like you're asking, it's like it's insane, right? May Allah forgive us and protect us, right? And then the question is, where does that come from? Right? Why would a man sleep with his own daughter? Where does the problem stem from? Lack of intellect, okay? So here's a question. Corrupt heart, okay? He's probably on the internet, right? So you're looking at things, no boundaries, shamelessness, okay? Overexposure to the wrong things, okay? Anything else? His marriage, thank you, right? So is he working on his own marriage? No. Is he sexually active in his own marriage? No. Okay. So there could be two sides to that, right? His side, that he's not trying to fix the marriage, he's not trying to be sexually active in his marriage, right? He's looking elsewhere, right? And also in his wife's side, that she's like, yeah, why would I sleep with you? What's your problem? Right? So husband and wife, this is why they are the most important thing in the whole ummah. Don't look at Gaza, look at the husband and wife. Don't look at the kids, look at husband and wife. Don't look at anything else, husband and wife. Husband and wife strong, everything works out. Okay? And I'm going to throw something out there which sounds very, very harsh and very, very cruel. And I don't want to be taken the wrong way. But would you prefer that to see a 50-year-old man rape his 16-year-old daughter? Or would you prefer to see a 50-year-old man get a second wife who was 16? You know what I'm saying? Right? So for those of you taking the Defemina class, we've seen that, right? Saying many people that said you shouldn't marry somebody who's younger than you, right? It's not a good idea. Okay, but what if she doesn't mind? What if she doesn't mind? She's like, yeah, I'll marry somebody who's 20 years old, 30, that's fine, I don't mind, right? And so one of the reasons, not the reason, and I'm not saying, oh, it's because we don't have polygamy. That's why polygamy, polygamy will save girls from being raped by their dads. That's not true, right? It's his fault. He deserves to be stoned to death. I'm not saying anything else. I'm not justifying anything. But I'm saying part of the complex situation is part of it is his own marriage, which has two sides, him and his wife. Okay? And so, you know, for sisters who say no to their husbands, see the perversion that you're adding to, right? You say no to your husband, you are adding to a perversion. Same thing for a husband to the wife, right? Things aren't happening between husband and wife. Things get pushed in weird directions. People get perverted. And women also sexually abused. It does happen. They sexually abuse boys and they sexually abuse girls. It does happen, right? And so, but another thing is, oh, if society and family didn't mind this man being sexually active with a halal other wife, then maybe he wouldn't do that. Right? I'm not saying he wouldn't, and that's the solution. I'm saying, but maybe he wouldn't. So it's an important thing to think about, right? Important thing to think about, right? So when you go to certain seas, okay, it's happening in this situation, right? If, you know, if this person was socially, I'm not socially allowed, meaning people were like, yeah, it's fine. He wants to go and get a second wife. That's fine. Uh, you know, and his wife was like, yeah, I understand that he's like this, and so yeah, you know, so as opposed to pushing people, right, pushing people into a fence, right, and then you add looking at the wrong stuff, plus you add lack of deen, plus you add this, plus you add that, and you put it all together, and it gets a very, very ugly situation, right? So I'm not trying to say, oh, it's women's fault, it's society's fault, right? It's not like that. It's your fault. You're responsible for your own actions. You're responsible for ruining someone's life or basically ruining someone's life. I'm not trying to say anything else, right? But, right, just like theft, right? If we had jobs, we wouldn't have so many thieves, right? So yes, we should go and cut people's hands off for stealing. That's true. But we should also try and find solutions for education and work, right? And part and parcel of that is politics, etc., 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 right? So there's many things involved there, but it's important to understand that. And just being real, right? So, I just want to share an example, a conversation I had with a taxi driver, right? This taxi driver, he said, you know, um, what did he say? He said, like, I look at stuff that I shouldn't look at. Okay. So he's basically looking at pornography. Okay. And it's really disgusting because basically he's like 50, 60 maybe. And his kids know that he looks at pornography. His wife does that. Sometimes they catch him like in the living room, right? It's like in a shared space. It's really disgusting. Anyway, so and he says basically, my wife doesn't want to touch me at all, like no skin contact. And she says, if she touches me, she says, I need to make wudu because you're like filthy, right? So again, is the guy sinful? He's sinful, right? You're looking at pornography, you shouldn't do that. You have no shame and it's just really weird and all sorts of levels. But do you think his wife is helping him by having that attitude? Like, I don't even like, so I mean, I don't blame her, right? I'm not trying to say I'm not his wife. I don't blame her. It's like it's repulsive, right? It'd be very difficult to like, whatever. But that's not very helpful, is it? That if you tell your husband, "Oh, I've seen you looking at women. Oh, I see you looking at that girl across the street. I don't want to be anywhere near you." Right? As opposed to a strong woman would be, this is very hard. This is very difficult. I don't feel loved. I don't feel respected. But let me be the stronger person and notice that my husband is like this, and I can help him by being sexually active with him, as opposed to no way. Right? Because you're just making the situation worse, right? You're just making the situation worse, right? So I'm not trying to say that it's the responsibility of women, and I'm not saying this onus on women, but I'm saying women can make the situation help better, right? They can. And I'm not trying to say it's easy because I'm not a woman, and that'd be a very difficult thing to do, of course, right? But I'm saying it is, there's a number of things happening there, a number of things happening, right? And I hope that makes sense. Okay, so we've spoken about these things, and okay. And the Hanbalis, they also add with zina, they also add you marrying your own girlfriend. Can you marry your own girlfriend? So you just had relations with this woman in a haram way. Can you marry her? Right? They say no, you cannot. Right? Until she repents. And I believe she has to go through istibra as well. She has to finish her iddah as well, because so that when she's pregnant, if she gets pregnant, if she becomes pregnant in the future, it's pregnant from a halal relationship and not from a haram relationship. Right? If I remember correctly. Okay. Um, okay. Am I making sense, inshallah? So if I've offended anybody today, please sit on what I've said that offended you or didn't make sense and confuse it. And maybe tomorrow write it up and be like, oh, did you say this or did you mean this or etc. Right? Um, well, that is as far as I know, that's exclusively the Hanbali school. Yeah. As far as I know, that's exclusive. So this woman that you had relations with, you because she's not a mahram. She doesn't become a mahram to you. So for the non-Shafi'i, she becomes a mahram to your like her daughter becomes your mahram. She becomes a mahram to your son, right? So your son cannot marry your ex-girlfriend, right? Um, but otherwise, your ex-girlfriend yourself, right? The issue is mixing up lineage that she's the same person, right? So why would it be a problem? So they say anyway, because it was a haram relationship, she has to repent, and you have to repent, and then you can get married. Right? Now double check the details with the Hanbali, inshallah. Now, should you apply that, right? Your friend comes to you, right? Your friend comes to you. He doesn't follow a madhab. He doesn't follow the deen to begin with, right? And he's like, hey, me and Tracy, we want to make it halal. Right? Explain to her the whole thing. Da, da, da. She's nebulously Christian. Okay, we want to make it halal. And you'd be like, oh, actually, it's not valid in the Hanbali school, Habibi, right? Anything to get them out of the pure haram into the possible halal is better, right? So you sit down and say, Tracy, do you understand what marriage is? Do you understand what he's going to owe you? Do you understand what you're going to owe him? So yeah, okay. Bismillah, do the contract, done. And now they're halal husband and wife, as opposed to a stupid relationship, right? And then she might not accept it. That happens sometimes, subhanAllah, right? And she sits down, she's told, you have this, and 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 you have this, oh, right? So basically, before you were living together and sharing expenses, now he has to pay for everything. It's like, oh, that's cool, right? And so, and then he's gonna, yeah, but we're not gonna do that. So, well, yeah, we are gonna do that, right? So she might become Muslim because of it. Who knows? She becomes Muslim. She's like, wow, I didn't realize, and nobody ever told me about marriage in Islam, and she becomes Muslim because of it. Who knows? Allahu A'lam. Anyway, we got to find a good place to pause. So it says, also forbidden you for marriage are your mothers, your daughters, your sisters, your paternal and maternal aunts, your brother's daughters, your niece, your sister's daughters, your nieces, their foster mothers, your foster mothers. So your foster mothers. Is that the word for it? Your foster mothers and foster sisters. That's like somebody who adopted you, isn't it? So, but your parent, your dad's wife, or your foster sisters. These are your foster sisters. So your sisters. So your dad's wife. If that what you mean by that. Otherwise, your foster sister. Your foster sister is not. That's not what it means. This is going to be your sister, your half sister, right? Your half sister or your dad's wife. That's what it means. Allahu Alam. I'm sure the translations maybe I'm misunderstanding the English or something. I don't know. Your mother's in law. So you marry a girl her mother is your mahram. Your stepdaughters under your guardianship if you have consummated the marriage with their mothers. So you marry this woman, she has a daughter. You haven't slept with that woman yet. You're going to get married properly in 6 months. Before that happens, it doesn't work out and you divorce her. 2 years later, you end up marrying her daughter. That's fine. So here's this woman. You married her, but you didn't consummate the marriage. Then you divorced her. And then you ended up marrying her daughter. That's valid, right? But it's not true. The opposite is not true. You marry somebody, you marry a girl, and her mother, merely through the contract, the mother becomes mahram, but the daughter only becomes a mahram through consummation, right? She only becomes your daughter-in-law through consummation, right? Your mothers-in-law, your stepdaughters under your guardianship, they don't have to be under your guardianship though, if you have consummated marriage with their mothers. But if you have not, then there's no harm in marrying them. Nor the wives of your sons, the wives of your sons are mahram, nor two sisters together at the same time. So they are temporarily mahram, right? Except what Allah has happened previously. Again, that's overlooked. In the past, you had happened to have married two sisters. Yes, your kids are your kids. We had a local case where what the wife's mother and the husband's father married, annulled the wife's husband. We had a local case where the wife's mother and husband's father married, annulled the wife-husband marriage. No, it doesn't. Doesn't. So that's like, so we mentioned that before. A father and son marry daughter, mother and daughter. That's fine. So Ahmed is married to Fatima. Then Fatima's mum marries Ahmed's dad. It's fine. It doesn't annul the marriage. So when Ahmed marries Fatima, Ahmed cannot marry Fatima's mum, but Ahmed's dad or brother could marry Fatima's mum. Does that make sense? Inshallah, I have to run. Inshallah, we'll okay. Inshallah. Okay. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم.